And we're live.
We're live. The 23rd annual PRL draft. My name is Taylor Brown, and I'm a fantasy baseball addict. Back in 1996, when I was in high school, Jason Watrous and I started the premier Roto League. The league has been in continual existence ever since. Over the years, I've joined 2 other fantasy baseball leagues to help scratch that itch. The Northern California Baseball League and the League of Ordinary Gentlemen, both with very different formats for my own PRL. In addition to serving as a competitive outlet, my involvement in these 3 leagues has allowed me to maintain old friendships and also introduce me to many new friends from all over California to as far as Japan. With this brief documentary, I'd like to give my competitors an opportunity to share their fantasy baseball experience with you.
What is fantasy baseball?
Fantasy baseball is like crack for a baseball dork.
You draft individual players on various teams, and based on the stats that they accumulate in actual games, your team, depending on how you play, your team either gets points or your team gets like counting stats.
In a sense, fantasy baseball is a little like gambling.
So to me, fantasy baseball is kind of like the stock market. I like to think of it like you're kind of investing in certain players' seasons. You think some guys who had a bad season the year before, you can kind of say, I think this player is going to have a good season, so you can kind of buy him low.
Love looking at the numbers and kind of diving, allows me to dive deeper into the analytical side and the numbers of baseball.
Fantasy baseball is a game for nerds. It started in high school when those of us who couldn't really make the baseball team still wanted to enjoy the sport. And we thought we were smarter than the guys on the baseball team, and then if we could pick a team of real major leaguers and keep track of their points, we could see who the smartest of us was.
Being a competitive person such as myself, I'm really drawn to it, and I'm not an athletic person or someone who can actually play baseball, so it gives me a chance to kind of be competitive about baseball when I myself am not a athletically competitive person.
Since there's so many players and so many different teams and so many different ways of scoring fantasy points, baseball is the most intriguing to me.
Fantasy football, I think, is a much easier sport to play in fantasy sports, and so baseball takes a lot more attention to detail.
You really need to know your stuff to be able to make sure that you put together the best possible team to score you the most possible points.
One of the fun things that we've seen as fantasy baseball has evolved over time is the technology.
We would choose our players based on books that would show the statistics for each player from the prior season. It would make projections on how that player may perform in the upcoming season.
I remember the first year of fantasy baseball manually calculating stats for all the players and tracking it on a spreadsheet that I did by hand.
When the internet became a big thing, we were able to move the maintenance of our league onto a website, and that allows us to meet up online now to make our picks for our teams.
It's nice to see the evolution where the technology has advanced and allowed this to be more automated.
But the other part that's always a problem for me is that if you're in a relationship, usually your wife or girlfriend doesn't really enjoy draft day or in preparation for draft day because you're spending all your time researching.
It's shameful, really, how much time I spend on it at the expense of my business, which is not doing well, my marriage, which is doing all right, and my parenting skills, which are just brutal. But my fantasy team's all right, so I got that going for me.
Now that I've had younger kids growing up and been interested in baseball, I'm glad I've been able to keep up with them, keep up with baseball, and share the passion that I've had growing up as a kid.
This is something that's been mine for many years, and how do I feel about my son getting involved in it? I never really thought about fantasy sports as being a generational thing, but it looks like it might be.
main goal is to win a trophy. This is one of the bobblehead trophies.
Best memories? Best recent memory is beating Taylor in the final of our fantasy league last year. That was pretty good.
It's very frustrating, and that's what you spend most of the season just like, hey.
For me, the league has never been about winning or losing. It has just been about sharing a common bond with fellow guys who are similar to you.
But outside of your little group, it's kind of meaningless. It's nothing. But within our own little world, it's kind of fun.
You know, you make fun of someone if they make a horrible pick. But even, better, it's great when you make a pick that someone else really wanted and they get mad at you because of that.
It's not all about just, making fun of your friends when you beat them. It's also, it engages you in conversation about baseball and, lets you talk about things that you ordinarily wouldn't really talk about.
I cannot live without fantasy baseball.
All right, I think that's enough. My wife is getting tired of holding the phone. All right, thank you.
The thing about this trophy is that I think it looks exactly like Taylor. And if you agree with me, just bobble your head like that.